All right, so I'm going to do this video that talks about Brewery Blocks by itself. And the reason why I keep focusing on Brewery Blocks, and people have asked too, what's going on with the Tacoma Town Center, and they're still working on that, right? They're still working on the original building that they started, which is building number two. They're working on the outside, the inside, but it's coming along. I just now drove by it today. I took Noelle to the studio because we have a pretty busy day at the studio. And what's cool about the Painting Panda Pottery Studio? It's right there in the Dome District at Freight House Square, but you have and parking is easy except for when there's a big event. There's a big parking garage right next door. But yesterday was a massive concert at the Tacoma Dome. Blake Shelton was there. So it was literally almost dead. And it was Valentine's Day. So it was literally dead. We got customers, but not like what we expected. And there was also an event going on in the event space. So it was just, there was a lot of entertainment going on in Tacoma all at one time. Today is really good. Today we're slammed. Noelle can't even keep up. We're running out of product even on the shelves because I guess people knew there was a big concert, and literally that part of downtown was just bad. Like that area, traffic can get nuts. And I understand why the city takes any proposals to develop over there seriously because traffic is just bad. It's just bad. Um, and also Bernie Sanders is coming on Monday. So Monday is going to be just as busy, if not as probably just as busy as it was yesterday, because the entire Tacoma Dome, which is where he's going to be, is going to be packed. So traffic does become a problem in that general area, even though it's the transit hub. It just can't keep up, right? But this video is not talking about that part of town or even our studio or anything like that. It's talking about Horizon Partners Northwest. Or it's not even talking about the Tacoma Town Center, but it's talking about Horizon Partners Northwest and their brewery block development. Now, they have really focused heavily on improving this entire setup. Now, I've done videos on brewery blocks before and basically kind of showed you what buildings are going to be there. And they're going to even put a pretty tall structure there that's going to you're going to definitely notice it, right? The concrete street that they're putting in is stamped concrete. So it's going to look like it's brick road, but it's not. I even got to see that today. So they've been working like fast trying to get this thing done. There's three buildings that are pretty much kind of online or online fully. Okay, one of them is a dark, and in the thumbnail you'll see what I'm talking about. So it's the second building that I'm referring to. There's like this dark brown brick building. Now that one there is done. I don't know what they did with it or anything like that, but that one's available. And so they've been, I think there's offices and things like that in there. I can't remember now. Then the one that they've actually started adding the cross laminate timber, which is CLT. Um, that's a new industry that is really of interest in this area because of all the trees and the logging industry. But anyway, so we've actually got one of those structures here, and they basically added on 4 more floors using the cross laminate timber. The tall building will have that also, right, on the floor structure. So the cross laminate timber is important because it's built a lot faster, it's a lot more stronger than just regular wood, that type of thing, right? But the bottom section is retail. So the rest of that is loft space. And those lofts are pretty pricey, right? I did a video going inside and you can kind of see it. But they're pretty pricey, but you're in the center of it all. Like the location of this is a prime location. And the reason why I say that is because if you go to like right there where Brewery Blocks is, literally across the street, like across the street is the University of Washington Tacoma. You have a huge student base, not massive, but decent sized student base. So any of the businesses there, if they're priced right, and we'll go back to that, students will have access to. Definitely business professionals, staff, things like that will have access to, right? You then have the light rail system, which is, down the hill, because this is kind of up on the hill. Basically, Tacoma kind of rises up in elevation, obviously, because we have a seaport, and so you're getting down to water level line, and then it goes up. So this is kind of sitting up on the hill, but down on Pack Avenue is the light rail line. Well, there's a stop that's relatively close by, so they can still benefit from getting a lot of people in and out of there relatively easily. There is parking available, and they were smart in that. And even on Pack Avenue, they have a parking garage. I think it's more specific for, it's more used for people that are working there, like people that have offices and things like that, I believe. So it's not just open to the general public, I believe. So it's just mainly for people who have businesses in that particular building. But they're going to also have parking structures located in other developments within this whole block. Now, this is literally a big, long block, a city block in Tacoma, hence Brewery Blocks, right? So you have all of that, right? You then have the museum campus right in front of the light rail system. So this is where you have the art museum, right? This is where you have the glass museum. Not far from all of this, you have the Children's Museum that goes up a little bit, right? So there's already shopping, there's university, there's everything. The other direction, past the university, is where the new huge hotel is, the convention center is there. So this is a great spot because you can get the convention business, you can get downtown workers, you get a lot of things, right? In addition, people who can afford it are going to be living in these different apartments and lofts that are there, right? It makes sense. Now they're spending $50 million on this project. And now they've released kind of the names of some of the businesses that are there. Now there's a small building that's on the end. And I'm like, when are they going to fix this building? It's a red building. And I thought that they were going to just add to it. Well, they really gutted that building out completely. It was mostly kind of a new build, and they've added a second floor onto it. It looks great. So it does favor now, excuse me, it now favors what is in the rendering. So that building is coming along, and it's going to have a lot of stuff in it. Now, one of the very first businesses that located there was Incline Cider. They were announced a long time ago. They're in there doing gangbusters. I'm not a big cider person, but they do have other stuff in there. Noelle has been in there, and because she loves ciders. It's pretty cool, right? It's a great hangout spot, right? Oh, and let me not forget, there's also a hotel right across the street. Holiday Inn Express is just literally across the street the other way from this whole setup. So now there's a lot of other different companies that are located in there. So there's a Chapter 13 firm that's located in there. There's Incline Cider. Those have already been in there. Now, First Citizens Bank has signed a lease, so they're going to have an actual bank that's there. Now, some people say that's silly, but this is important because literally there's no banks right in that general section, right? There's really no actual banks. So this is great because we're creating an area that has everything that you kind of need. Like, you don't have to walk 6 blocks just to get to a bank or get to whatever. It's all kind of right there. And it also takes advantage of the fact too that students may have an account with First Citizens Bank, or they maybe need a bank. So it's very smart. The part that really excites me is a couple of different things. There's something that's called Rock-A-Burger. So there's a company here called Ice Cream Social and Philly This. They're two different companies. Both of them have worked together to create a new company called Rock-A-Burger. And so that is going in there. it's a burger joint. Now, anytime there's a burger joint, I'm wanting to go. Now, Philly, their food is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's all I got to say. So, if that's any indication of what their burgers are going to be, that place is going to be full, especially if it's priced right. They're also going to have Olympia Washington Company is going to come in and bring a coffee roaster, and it's called Dancing Goats. Okay. Now, the first, what it says is that this is a total of 100 million. I said 50 million. It's 100 million, right? So I apologize. $100 million project total, and that's the high rise they're building and everything. So Bitterroot Barbecue is also coming there. Now Bitterroot is out of Seattle, and they're going to be located in that one little new building that I said that they basically gutted completely and they rebuilt it. They're going in there. There's also a company from Vashon Island called Camp Kovo's Brewing. Now, Noelle drove by there the other day because she was on Vashon Island for her work, and she saw that, right? So they're talking about this is basically 5 bars and restaurants, which is the first wave of tenants that are coming. They also started moving people into the 49 lofts that are available in that 7-story building, right? So you have Bitterroot, which is yet another Seattle restaurant enticed by the success of other expansions like Cactus, which is in Proctor, and Ryan House, which is in the Stadium District. Now, let me focus on that for a second. I think the businesses in Seattle that locate here are pretty smart. One, because the rent, and this is a brand new, all of what they're in is brand new, brand spanking new. Yet the rent is still cheaper than a lot of the spaces up in Seattle that's been sitting there for decades. And you're also in an up-and-coming area. You're going to be right in the prime spot. You have a university right there. You have the town center, which is not going to be too far, which is going to have its own mall, but it's going to have a tremendous amount of residential space. Not to mention that you're going to have additional housing going up in the middle of downtown. There's even another development going up right there close to the convention center. And then you have another one that's right there where the old Woolworths is. It's going to be in that general area, another apartment development. So it makes sense. This makes good sense, right? So Batterdorf and Bronson Coffee Roasters will open its 6th Dancing Goat Cafe in the Puget Sound region. Okay. It also owns 4 locations in Atlanta, Georgia. So they said that the name could change, but that is kind of the concept. And what they wanted was to make sure the people who developed this whole entire project is they didn't want to have 2 of the same thing. They didn't want to have 2 pizza joints, 2 burger joints, that type of thing. They wanted things to be different. So it's really, really cool. Now, Camp Kovo's is going to open its 2nd brew pub, and it's going to have New York style pizza. Now, that right there is going to be amazing. Now, they're also partnering with a pizzeria in Seattle to consult for their menu, so they can have New York and Sicilian style pies. And so it's going to be pretty cool. So you're going to have pizza and beer right there. They're talking about the types of beers that he produces and that type of thing. They said that even though they've been in business for less than 2 years, Tacoma was always part of their plan, right? Incline Cider said something similar. It's always been their plan because Incline Cider is not from Tacoma either, right? They're from a different city and they located there. He said that even though they were on Vashon Island, they built a lot of their business with Tacoma because a lot of people in Tacoma went to Vashon just to go to his business, right? Let's see. Rocket Burger. It's Incline Cider. So they keep talking about this. Now, here's where my particular concern comes in. Is cost. All of these businesses are great. I think it's great. But one of the big issues is cost. Now, none of these places are going to be to the point where I couldn't afford it. This isn't necessarily talking about people like myself or the people that can live in those lofts or anything like that, because they can afford all of those businesses, going to those businesses on a regular basis, right? None of those are going to be, and and I say this with all due respect, none of those places are going to be so expensive to where a lot of people who are professionals or what have you can't go. They could go every day if they wanted to. But one of the big problems is affordability for students. You're right next door to a university that has over 5,000 students, and a lot of them cannot afford, and they're living right downtown, some of them. A lot of them cannot afford to go and get something to eat. If you look at some of the businesses along Pack Avenue, the university owns those buildings. And a lot of those businesses, students cannot even afford because it's just their price kind of high. And there's a reason why these businesses charge so much, and I'll get to that. But when we're talking about some of these burger joints and different things like that, do I think they're going to be successful? Yeah. Bitterroot Barbecue, will they be successful? Yeah. I have there's no question that these businesses are going to be fine. But the biggest issue is the fact that a lot of students are not going to be able to afford it, and there's really no place for students to go in terms of food affordability. That's a big, big concern. Now, with that said, are there places where students can go and eat and it becomes a lot more affordable? Yes, there's places, even in Freight House Square. Freight House Square kind of has like a food hall, if you will. And a lot of those businesses there serve everything from Thai food to burger joints to ice cream to what have you. And you also have a lot of cool shops and stores too. But that is a lot more affordable as opposed to some of the things that you see that's coming online now. A lot of students can't afford that. Is it a quick train trip down there? Yeah, they can take the light rail all the way down to the Dome District and it gets off right there. That's perfect. But if someone is just wanting a quick little jog over to get something, these may not be the businesses for that. Now, that's not to criticize them, but it is to address another issue. And this is something that I'm going to bring up and that Noelle has already brought up before to people that have power, right? We are going to, because we have the studio, we were chosen to participate in a project with the Chamber of Commerce and Spaceworks, right? So Spaceworks is basically a creation of the Chamber of Commerce, City of Tacoma, and their goal is to make sure that they can foster businesses, right? Whether you're an existing business or you're thinking of starting a business, you go through that program and they have to approve you first. You go through that program and then they kind of give you some tips and pointers. And if needed, you can have a business cohort find a location for you as far as a business, right? And it's really cool. It's kind of challenging to get into that program, but we got into it. There's another program that we got into, and this one Noelle went to. And this is put on by a completely different group. And they're doing workshops and different things like that for new businesses, and they're wanting to get information and all of that. And she went to it, and one of the things that she mentioned was affordability. The big issue is business affordability in terms of retail space. There's not a lot of that. And because retail spaces charge so much money, businesses have no choice but to charge very expensive prices. And some of these businesses can't really do that. You can't charge $15 for a burger and expect to be in business long. So you have to make sure you strike a good balance to where you price everything accordingly to get a flood of people in, to kind of offset things like rent and everything else. So it becomes a challenge, right? It becomes a severe challenge to kind of make it. Now, these are businesses that are very well financed. So they don't have that problem as much, but they're still going to charge quite a bit for their stuff, right? Generally. But when you're talking about somebody that's just starting out, a lot of times what is a big problem is the fact that you're going to have rent that is so expensive, and it increases every so often to the point of where you run out of space. You really don't have the financial capital anymore to keep up with it. And so that to me is a major, major problem, not only in Seattle for sure, because there's a lot of businesses that are going bye-bye because they can't afford it, along with the competition. But that's also a concern here in Tacoma, where you have places that charge huge amounts of money for retail space. It doesn't benefit anybody because you end up with businesses that leave, and it makes the concept of locating in that city a negative one from the business standpoint. So you see businesses kind of leaving places like Seattle and taking a chance someplace else because it makes more sense. And then when you look at Tacoma, if you're coming from Olympia or Vashon, which are much smaller places, this is kind of the next step up because you're kind of in a big city, but you're not dealing with something like a Seattle, right? So with that said, I had mentioned to, and I will mention this also when I go to Spaceworks, the concept of them finding a way, the city or the chamber or whoever, finding a way to actually help young businesses, provide a true business incubator, retail space. Because a lot of these businesses, you have people who are starting out and they have a great concept, but their financing is not going to let them do a Brewery Blocks or do a Tacoma Town Center. They just can't afford to do that. Those businesses are needed to create the diversity that you have downtown. For example, the Painting Panda Pottery Studio. Our studio, typically people spend on average over 2 hours. So I've had people spend as little as 30 minutes. I've had people spend 4.5 hours in that studio. And that is the type of stuff that you want, because people are staying in one area for quite a bit of time. They're going to leave and probably go and get something to eat. They're going to be spending more time in that neighborhood. But when you have prices for retail that's so expensive, businesses like this can't make it. There are a lot of pottery businesses, paint-it-yourself pottery studios in the area that have went out of business. We've actually bought out a business, their stock, everything from them. And it's unfortunate, but they're a victim of a situation like this where it just is so much money to rent out a space, they can't afford it. So I'm going to be working on something with those folks to see if there's a way to kind of help a lot of new coming businesses. There's a lot of ideas that's been done in other places and that make great sense. It could easily work here. There's companies that have kind of done something similar. So that's kind of the concept. That's kind of the idea. That's the hope. So yeah, getting back to this, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what else happens. There are going to be 5 new retail spaces opening up in the Tacoma Town Center. Don't have any clue as to what those businesses will even be. I do know that those are actually being, a real estate company is also marketing those spaces. But in addition, a real estate company is also marketing spaces for the town center that hasn't even been built yet. So building number 1, which will have that big giant retail space, which could either be used for a movie theater or a grocery store, but it also has space for a lot of other businesses, as well as I mentioned this before, an esports arena. That's that building. That building is also being marketed right now, and it doesn't even exist. So we'll see, hopefully, in the future what's going to happen and what actually goes in there. But as far as I'm concerned, this right here is a massive game changer for that part of downtown. The Brewery Blocks project is a big boost for downtown Tacoma. It adds businesses that have not and would not have came here had it not been for that project. They just wouldn't have. And there's a lot of retail space in downtown Tacoma that's just sitting there, but those spaces require a lot of work, or they're not in the right location, or there's something. And so those businesses or those retail spaces need to figure that out, because they're going to always sit like that. Some of them are charging way too much. And I know this because I went through and I worked with that business cohort, looked at some of these spaces. They're just way overpriced for what you're getting. So they're going to continue to sit there. But ventures like this can easily sell out retail space quick, because It's a brand new project. It's in the right location. It is a hot area. It is a very hot area. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really and truly think that once we start seeing some of these businesses open, obviously I'll be there. I'm going to try them out. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.